Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Jeff Glover.
All right, this one is going to be a fun one because we are going to have a very upfront and honest conversation about the struggles that we went through as a company and as a team as our business was growing. Now, I know a lot of you may be in different roles in this room. We have operations team members here. We have buyer's agents. We have listing agents. We have lead agents. We have solo agents. So what I want you to do, just kind of like I mentioned with Bruce, you have to think about, okay, how can I take what they're sharing? How can I take this experience, this failure that they went through, and apply it to what I'm doing? Because here's the reality. A lot of people say, well, why would I go to an operations mastermind? I'm not an operations staff person. Well, because especially if you're a solo agent, you are the listing agent, the buyer's agent, the showing agent, the listing manager, the closing coordinator, the transaction manager. You are all of those roles. So it's important that when you look at what you need to do to say go from 20 transactions closed a year to 40 to 60 to 80 to whatever that number is, there's going to have to be something that you implement operationally, whether it is a person that does that or whether it is yourself. There's going to be things that relate to operations, especially if you intend on providing the customer experience like we saw this morning from Bruce. If you're going to implement anything out of that, it's going to take some operational thinking and looking at your current business and shifting your mentality to, what do I have to do from an operations standpoint in order to get to the Ritz-Carlton of service, the Ritz-Carlton of running a business? So what we're going to do for the next maybe 40, 45 minutes or so, we're going to have an upfront, honest, candid conversation where I'm going to interview a young lady who started with us when she was 18 years old as a marketing assistant and then became our listing manager, then our closing manager, then our office assistant, and then operations manager, and then of course now running and coaching and working with some of the best operations teams around the country as a coach for Glover U. She actually started the operations coaching for another large organization that is still intact and running today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage Miss Taylor Kerrigan.
This speech is mighty exciting. I think it's very vital to rock around. That's right. On time. It's tricky. Here we go. It's tricky to rock around. That's right. On time. It's tricky.
Happens to also be her favorite song.
Purposely requested it.
She's in charge. She can do those things. So let's start with I think it's important to kind of set the tone, if you will, of letting everyone know kind of what your learning process and your learning curve has been, what your role looked like when you started with us, what we went through, and then we'll get into, the topic is 27 pain points. I doubt we'll get through all of them, but we'll get into some of the important parts of the transaction that will help everyone in the audience implement a Ritz-Carlton type model into their business. So why don't you start with what the beginning looked like for you?
Okay, so like Jeff mentioned, I was hired at 18 to his organization. At the time, I was going to school for marketing, and he had posted on Facebook that he was looking for a marketing assistant. And my sister was his Facebook friend and sent me the ad and said, hey, you should go apply. So we reached out to him. I set up an interview. You told me to come in the next day, and I came in, and we talked for about probably 25 minutes, and he told me I was hired. So
it's not how it's supposed to go, by the way. We don't teach people to do it that way.
You'll find out that we quickly implemented a hiring process after that. But he hired me as a marketing assistant, and actually one of the stories that I tell all the time was you hired me on I think it was like a Wednesday. And that Friday, you were leaving for a Keller Williams event, and you asked me to hop on a plane to Dallas and go with you. And when I told my family that, they're like, you just got hired by this company. You have no idea who this guy is. Do you really think that that's a good idea? And they actually kind of told me not to do it. And so I did anyways, because at 18, that's what you do, right? And so I went, and we went to Keller Williams Family Reunion event, and that's basically when I got introduced to everything that Keller Williams and real estate and just basically how we run things. My mom was a realtor, and she still is until this day, so I did have some real estate background knowledge. I actually learned how to use the MLS before I started working with him, but other than that, I didn't really know real estate. So that was basically my first week with him, was going to that event.
And by the way, the thought process behind that was I have to go to the event to listen to the sales training stuff. I need to go there to listen how to become a better salesperson and to build a big business by generating a ton of leads. So while I'm doing that, I want you attending all of the technology and operational type stuff, because that was stuff that either A, I knew for a fact I wasn't any good at, or B, I knew that it wouldn't necessarily fit my personality profile to go sit in those classes and take those notes, because I was bad at implementing that stuff. So
you also later told me that you figured it was your quickest way to have someone else train me.
yeah,
So
that too.
so we did that. I was his marketing assistant, and probably about maybe 6 months, and I realized that although I enjoyed marketing, that wasn't really what my forte was, and I quickly found out that what I really enjoyed doing and what I had a passion for was implementing processes and procedures and kind of fixing things that were not necessarily broken but could be better. And so I kind of fell into a role of his executive assistant. At that time, you were closing what, 100?
I was probably doing 125 deals myself, and I think as a company, our agents were doing around 125, 150. So collectively, about 300 transactions when you started.
So he was doing 125 by himself, and although we had a transaction coordinator and a listing coordinator, he didn't actually have someone keeping him on task every single day. So naturally, if you walked into his office, it looked like a bomb blew up. There was stuff everywhere.
A lot of your offices look like that.
So I quickly fell into that role as the executive assistant for him, and basically you told me that my job was to keep you on task.
Yep.
And so as a result,
By the way, the number one job of an executive assistant, well, I'm going to say two things. Number one, if I could go back and do it all over again, first hire would not have been a listing manager. Second hire would not have been a closing coordinator or transaction manager. First hire is an executive assistant. And even better if you can find an executive assistant who could be an assistant executive, right? You see the difference? It's same two words, just flipped. An executive assistant who could become an assistant executive. Now, of course, you have to see the potential in the person, and they have to want to do that at some point. But if I could do it all over again, I would actually recommend, and we recommend this in our coaching, you start as your first hire as an executive assistant, because not only do they take a lot of things off your plate, but they actually help you become more productive. And I think the mistake a lot of agents make when they hire a transaction coordinator or a listing manager / transaction coordinator is, yes, they have things taken off their plate, but they don't have someone keeping them on task. It's more so, here, just take this, work this, take this, work this, where you were, yep, I can take this, I can work it, and oh, by the way, did you make your 20 contacts today? It's 9:30, why are you off the phone, right?
and I did exactly that. I took things off your plate, and I just started doing things and grabbing them and saying, I can do this isn't something that you need to be doing. And so that's kind of how I morphed then from that point to the executive assistant into basically our transaction coordinator and our listing coordinator role, because I started looking at our process and started looking at, because I was more involved in the actual business at that point, I was helping him with his transactions, I was keeping him on task, I was making sure he was calling clients. I was noticing that there were kind of holes in the process, and so I started to just fill those holes myself. And it was great because we started to do great business. We started to close more homes. The downside of that is that listing coordinator and that transaction coordinator that we were working with didn't necessarily love the way that we were filling the holes or the suggestions that we were making to do more business. They are amazing people. I'm still friends with them to this day. However, they also didn't want to do more. And when you put he and I in a room, as you've probably learned by now, we are constantly already thinking about, okay, how can we make this bigger? How can we do more? What can we do to make this better? And our mindsets just didn't match. And so this was probably, I think it was maybe around my 1-year anniversary. It was a nice gift to myself. Our transaction coordinator and our listing coordinator both walked into his office and quit on the same day.
Yep.
So there was a team of 3 of us, and it quickly went down to one of us,
Yep.
which was
And
myself.
that was 350, 400 350 transactions at the time.
Yeah.
Between the two of us handling now all of this administration.
Yeah, so Jeff used a phrase that he uses quite often with me, and he said, well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. And so,
It worked.
yep. So he basically said, in more or less words, they quit because of you.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
In a good way, though. They quit
Yeah.
because we were implementing more stuff, and
Yep.
we were improving our customer service, and they just weren't the right people on the bus. And so, they showed themselves at the
It's
door.
a good lesson in someone who's with you at X amount of transactions or X amount of business or X amount of sales may not show up as the same person a year or two later when your business goes like this.
Yeah.
They might show up as a different person. And I think it's in the real estate industry, we're like, well, they were there and they know our processes, and we avoid the pain of hiring someone else. And we avoid the pain of going through interviews. We avoid the pain of having to retrain, and instead we keep the person in place and just try to do the best we can with them, when really they actually start to work against you at some point. And we had that happen in our business.
Yeah, I always use the saying that as your organization continues to grow, which it should grow every year, whether you're a real estate agent just doing 50 transactions and the next year you're doing 75 or whatever it is, the people in your organization, as you're leveling up your business, they either need to also step up, or you'll see that they step aside. And in this case, they decided to step aside. And honestly, yep, it would be lying if I said I didn't probably go out of my car and cry for a few minutes thinking about how we were going to make this happen while the business was closing as many units as it was. But it forced us to go out and find the talent that later helped us hit the goals that we've hit now. And so, yeah, it was difficult, and I know we'll talk more about, kind of exactly how that looked like, but honestly, it was a blessing in disguise, and I 100% believe that we probably would not have grown as quickly as we did if we still had those people, and if we kept them just because, like you said, they were the people that helped you start the business. The fact that they forced us to go out and find other talent allowed us to do a little bit more.
Yep. And now during those days, keep in mind, remember, I was a transactional agent. There was no such thing as relational. And the challenge is because I was transactional, she was young and still maturing as adult, if you will. She just didn't know any different. Well, this is a successful business. I'm getting paid to be here. I'm going to continue just following what Jeff says to do. And the reality is, now it's changed, but we didn't talk once about customer service or customer experience. It was just numbers, 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 business, 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 drive, drive, drive. And the customer experience for several years was, average at best. During that time, I mean, we were up, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock ordering signs. I mean, it was you and I and 350 transactions with administration.
Yeah, so at that point, I was basically responsible for everything operationally. So I was inputting listings. Usually our listings went active around midnight. We were processing transactions as the transaction coordinator, and then I was still helping him maintain the current clients that he had. And so as I believe that's also the year that we ended up doing right around 225 transactions together.
My peak was, I added probably 80 or 90 transactions to my business once I realized it made sense. And I can't even take credit for this because she just kind of morphed into the role of executive assistant. I went from 125 to 130 transactions to over 200 transactions, myself personally. And it was just her and I for a lot of that. And we were battling a lot.
So we were really structured with our day, which still to this day, if you know me, you know that every 15 minutes I'm changing what I'm doing and switching what my focus is, and I force him to do the same as well. But during that time, it was very much, he got in at 9 o'clock, we sat down from 9 until 10, I closed the door, no one was allowed to come in while we were in there, and we were going through, and I was literally picking up the phone, dialing the number, and saying, here, it's the Johnsons, and making him have those conversations. And really it was that I guess the best word is like forced accountability
Yeah.
of going through our call list and saying, okay, first we're calling new clients, okay, now we're calling our current clients and presenting offers, okay, now we're doing lead follow-up, and it was just an intense 60 minutes every single day. But because we did that, and because I sat in that room and listened to how he did it, we were able to do what we did with closing that many homes. And ultimately, what ended up happening is I spent that 60 minutes with him every single day, and at the end, I would ask questions of, why did you do this? Why did you say that versus this? You know, quick questions that helped me understand why he conducted himself the way he did. And as a result, I was able to change my language to speak like him. And so, you know, we'll talk again more about it, but customers pretty much got to the point where I was answering his email and they thought it was him, and it was me every single time. But we were able to do more because now there were basically two Jeffs. I'm
Yes.
the female of
Which-
Jeff.
Of course, we
name's Jess.
we became more productive because of that. But again, no repeat, no referral.
Correct.
You know, we weren't getting 5-star reviews or anything like
Right.
that. It was just very transactional. And so when was it that we made the decision to say, you know what, customer service, customer experience, like what happened? What was the pivotal moment in your mind?
Well, I think because during that, and basically we didn't have the listing coordinator and the transaction coordinator for about 9 months. It's like we had a baby for 9 months. It was terrible being pregnant without having those people. So during that 9 months, it was definitely like, okay, let's just get through the day and not cry by midnight. And we probably bickered even more than we do now about things. And so during that time, again, it was getting through the day. And then after I started hiring the right talent, which we tried to also have to fit in the day, okay, interviews, talking to people, you know, having certain people walk in the door and then realizing, oh my gosh, I wish I could already end this interview. So having those people come in, we found the right people, and as soon as I started to find the right people, then I was able to go back and look at how our business was and all of the holes that were in the organization and the things that took me double the amount of time just because we didn't have the process right. And so I would say as soon as I was able to hire my first listing coordinator and my first transaction coordinator, then I was able to shift my focus from just getting through the day to making the day enjoyable for myself and for our clients. And at that point, I would already, you know, during that 9 months, I was like, okay, I need to make a mental note that as soon as it gets done being crazy, this we have to do right away. This we have to do right away. And so that's basically that consultant phase where, you know, we then brought that person in and I just threw up all my ideas and told her, this is everything that I think is wrong. What do you think? And basically rolled out what our new customer service was.
And I think, obviously, prior to that point, again, and this goes back to when you're working with the right-hand person, they are, in most cases, going to model your behavior. So in order for your customer experience to get better, in order for your database to grow, in order for your repeat and referral business to grow, you have to display that and not just say, hey, you go learn it, you go figure it out. So I had to change as a person, you had to change because you were used to just watching numbers, units, transactions. And I think we even caught some footage of what it looked like, the two of us working together during that time. So we had some people in the office recording us. Maybe we brought that along.
This line is huge. And it's like this all the time.
Isn't that that Banya guy?
Oh, no. It is. Just be still.
Not too late. I think he picked up the scent.
Hey, Jerry! I didn't know you liked soup.
Hard to believe.
This guy makes the best soup in the city, Jerry. The best. You know what they call him? Soup Nazi.
All right, then I'm not letting you cut in line.
Why not?
Because if he catches us, we'll never be able to get soup again.
Okay.
Medium turkey chili.
Medium crab bisque.
I didn't get any bread.
Just forget it. Let it go.
Excuse me, I think you forgot my bread.
Bread, $2 extra.
$2, but everyone in front of me got free bread.
You want bread?
Yes, please.
$3! What? No soup for you.
She was obviously the cashier. I was the soup guy. So we brought in a consultant, and let's talk about that for a second. What did we learn through that experience? What did we change? What did we implement?
Well, I think the first thing that happened is we admitted with ourselves that what we had wasn't great. You know, and I think that that's the first step that everyone needs to do in their business, that you always have room for improvement. Most people would say, gosh, you guys were closing, you know, over 400 transactions. Why wasn't that amazing? And it wasn't amazing because I honestly would be upset with myself at the end of the day with the experience our clients were getting. I knew that if I was selling my home, I wouldn't want that same feeling and kind of pushing them through just to get to the closing table. And honestly, it wasn't because we didn't care about them. It was just because we had so much coming in and we didn't have the help to provide that experience. And so the first step was admitting that, and then the second step was looking at, okay, what are all of these pain points in the transaction, you know? And the conversation that I have with a lot of coaching clients I work with now is you can easily identify your pain points. Your pain points are every time they call you and they're complaining about something or asking a question. Anytime that happens, there's a pain point for you. And so what we looked at when we sat down with this consultant, we actually had a big whiteboard in our office, and she asked me, okay, when do they call you? What are they asking? What is their happiness level at that point? And we wrote down each of those things, and then those were like in red, and I actually have anyone who works with us in our operations coaching, this is one of the first things that we have you do. I make you write out all of those steps in your transaction, and that's in one color. And then in the other color, you write in a line, and you put a line and you say, okay, how can I get in front of this before they call me? And we basically ended up coming up with this motto on our organization and our operations team. You ask any of them, they know it because we repeat it almost every single day. What can I do so the client never calls me first? And I promised myself, and we made the promise to our organization, that we were going to build a business that we basically never see our client's name on our caller ID. Because if we're doing a great job with our customer service, they don't have to call us because they already know what's happening next. We've already given them the next 3 steps so that way they can prep for it, and we've answered all of their questions before they even have it. And so when we went—
Which, by the way, I'm sure that is how an organization like the Ritz-Carlton operates, right? Even backstage, I shouldn't have to go grab someone to refill the coffee. They should check it every 20 minutes. They should replace it, which, coincidentally, they are right now. They should replace it before we have to ask for more coffee or for hot coffee. And that's just general, experience, right? So.
And honestly, it can also be done at any level in the business. Yes, we were closing 400, 500 transactions here, but everything that happens in a real estate transaction is pretty much the same for all of us, right? Everyone signs a listing contract. Most cases, everyone gets a sign in the yard. I hope everyone gets an offer on their property, and hopefully we always make it to the closing table. All of those things are always the same in every single transaction. So the things that we talk about up here and the things that we teach as far as providing an unreal customer service is, as much as I would love to say that it's amazing and it's something that is one of a kind, it's not. Anyone can do what we're doing at any level of the business that you're in. And so we sat down with her and we identified that motto of what can we do so a client never calls us first, and then we did it. We wrote out every single step of the transaction. For example, a sign gets placed every single time. I know when the sign's going to get placed because the sign company tells me that they're installing it on Tuesday. Well, Monday evening, I would call the client and let them know, I just got out of a meeting with Jeff. He let me know that he talked to our sign company, and they'll be placing your sign tomorrow morning.
Now,
here's a picture of what, let me get you the whole thing. So here is a picture of what the sign looks like. As you can see, there's an 800 number on the sign. When you call it tomorrow, you're going to hear a recording about your home. What happens on the back end of that is we're also receiving that client's phone number at the same exact time, and one of our buyer's agents are going to be calling them within 5 minutes to ask them if you have any questions about your property. Tomorrow when your sign gets placed, I would love for you to give it a try. Call that 800 number and you'll see us working for you. Do you have any other questions for us at this time? No? Okay, great. So the next time you're going to hear from us is when our photographer comes out on Wednesday evening. He's going to take a couple pictures, blah, 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 blah. So that's basically the structure of getting in front of them.
And what I wanted to add to that, 2 things. Number 1, this is something anybody could do with any vendor or any partner or anyone you work with. We had to get our sign company to agree if they wanted our business, they had to let us know every single time a sign is placed. Because prior to that, we didn't know the code that was being put in the front yard. I mean, we actually would ask clients to go out in their yard and tell us what the code is on the sign so we can change the darn recording. I mean, talk about bad service, right? So that one question, what can I do, change, add, or implement so a client never has to call us first? That's just one of 67 of those that we did flip. But we also had to get our vendor partners involved in that process.
Yeah, and I think that there's two important things in that script that I just said that I want to make sure I point out to all of you. For anyone who has an assistant or a team in this room where you have a director of operations, you heard in the beginning of my call to the client, I said I just got out of a meeting with Jeff and he asked me to give you a call to let you know that X. Do you really think that Jeff just talked to the sign company, and do you really think that I just got out of a meeting with him? No. He has no idea who that client is or where that sign's going or
Wait a minute.
whatever.
I know who they are, I just forgot their names.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why he doesn't like client parties, because we don't have one of those books. You know, I forget, is it fashion shows or what it is, where they have like I think it was the Devil Wears Prada, where they had like a book with all of the clients and like a picture of their face. That's what you need.
Yeah.
So that way you recognize who
Name
people are.
tags, minimum.
That's why everyone wears name tags at these events. Just kidding. So basically, with that script, I just got out of a meeting with Jeff, and he asked me to call you to let you know X. I basically adapted, and this was one of the amazing things that you taught me, and if you can teach your executive assistant or anyone on your team this as well, it really changed that past client referral and that customer satisfaction rating. To use that script, because the client feels that I really did just get out of a meeting with him and that he's involved every step of the way in the transaction. And anyone I work with, we make sure that you know you have to remove I. You will never hear me say in a conversation with a client the word I. You'll never hear our operations team say it, because they have been trained that if you say I, we've got a problem.
Yep. And that's because they feel like they don't have the relationship with me anymore, and it's now with the operations team member. And not that that's a bad thing, assuming they're going to be with us forever. Right. The problem is it hurts repeat and referral business.
They didn't hire me, they hired him.
Yep. So we actually had a rule of 3 for a while, and we don't really talk about it as much anymore because they've gotten so good at it. But the rule of 3 was basically your goal on every call with a client is to mention Jeff's name at least 3 times. Figure out how you can get his name mentioned in there 3 times. Even if it is, Jeff is looking forward to hearing back from you, or just got out of a meeting with Jeff, or just got off the phone with Jeff, or Jeff reached out to the listing agent, because they have to know that I'm just as involved in that transaction as I would be if they were working directly with me.
And honestly, from the executive assistant standpoint, what I ended up learning is that they gave me a lot less pushback when I said his name. You know, I would call him and say, hey, I just got out of a meeting with Jeff. We got an offer on your property. It came in at $200,000. He thinks we should counter at $210,000. Are you okay with that? And they would immediately say yes. I picked that number based on what he taught me. And so versus if I were to say, well, I got the offer. I really think we should counter at $210,000. I don't know. What do you think? You know, that you see the difference between those two conversations? Instantly, they were always telling me yes, and it made my job a lot easier, and I was able to get off the phone with them a lot quicker so I can move on to the next thing. And so by structuring the conversation that way and constantly saying your name, 1, they felt like they were really involved, or you were really involved, and 2, they felt so much more comfortable with the process. And so honestly, that year, yes, we closed 225 the year before because we were so transactional and moving as quickly as possible. But the next year, we still did amazing. I think we did like 180 or something like that. But our repeat and referral business went up. And it's really cool now because we'll have clients that I helped like 5 years ago that will call us because they're ready to sell now. And they reference that they worked with us before and they came back and they want that same experience. And so we're seeing that number skyrocket.
Now, the challenge in this, and I get it, we have operations people in the room, obviously. One of the challenges, if I could give any advice to that group, you have to set your ego aside because it's natural for any of us. It's human nature. We want to take credit for the success. Look what I was able to accomplish. Look at the deal I just put together for you. Look at how I just convinced this agent to get their buyer to pay another $2,000. Look at how I was able to get them to still show up to closing. You can have that conversation with your agent, but never, ever, under any circumstances, can the client think that it was you that made that happen. And I know that that's hard because human nature is, I want to be validated. I want to show my worth to the client. I want to feel good when I go home and say I accomplished A, B, and C. Well, you can do all those things. You just can't let the client know it was you. And for those of you that are in the process of working with the executive assistants or considering making your first hire or maybe adding staff, that is the most critical point in that relationship working. Because although we had before okay service and the business was growing, the problem is I wasn't getting any repeat referrals because my clients felt that they were being handed off to somebody and that they were now working with that person as opposed to working with me. So we have to do, as an operations team, everything we can to show the client that Jeff is involved every step of the way. And if you take credit for something, then that means Jeff didn't accomplish that for the client, which means the client doesn't remember that. They remember you did it, but that doesn't matter. That's not who they hired, and they're not going to send repeat referral business or potentially be a past client. I would say that's probably one of the greatest challenges that we went through when it went from the two quitting to you getting involved and bringing in others, because it's just human nature to take credit when you accomplish something. It's just human nature to say, yep, I just got off the phone with the buyer's agent and they were able to convince their buyer to bring another $2,000 to closing. It's just human nature to do that. And it feels good. You solved something. The client's like, oh my gosh, Nancy, I love you. That is awesome. You're amazing. Good job. Jeff hired a great one. Make sure Jeff gives you a raise. That's real stuff. That's real stuff. And again, it's good to have that sense of accomplishment, and it is an accomplishment. You just can't take credit for it. You have to give the agent the credit.
And I would celebrate in my office by myself, trust me, but the client never saw it. And so it was actually a goal of ours that a client would write a review every single time, and I made it a point to make sure that my name was out of it. It would say Jeff and his team,
Yes.
or Jeff and the support staff.
Oh gosh,
And
yes.
so I actually had a previous mentor of mine, Monica Reynolds, who first introduced me to kind of the assistant world, share a story about how assistant who actually got a closing gift and how that was actually a transaction that lead agent wasn't excited about, because guess what? The agent didn't get a closing gift. The transaction coordinator did. That means we did something wrong. And so from an operations standpoint, for anyone who's overseeing other people that interact with your clients, that was the biggest thing that I learned from you and that we taught to others.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even in our reviews, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there are reviews out there that mention your name, but we didn't celebrate those as much because that tells me that they think that we're two of us that were involved. And yes, there's two of us that are involved, but they have to believe that I'm the one making the magic happen, even if it's her. And so that's a great example of the gift. Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure, again, operations team, you love receiving gifts, and hopefully you're getting them from your agent in some way or another, but not from the clients.
And so now what I'll say is that as an agent, it's your responsibility to give them that recognition then. You know, if we're saying that you can't receive the recognition from the client because the client needs to see the lead agent as the main person, now it's that lead agent's responsibility to make sure that that operations person feels valued and you recognize what they're doing, you appreciate them, which is obviously, you know, what you did a great job of. With that script that I just gave you a few minutes ago, there's something else that I said that's really important for everyone in the room when you're working with a client and you're dealing with pain points. If you heard in the beginning of the conversation, I said, here's what just happened, which is your sign just got placed. Here's what's going to happen next. Our photographer is going to come out on Wednesday, and here's the next time you're going to hear from us. We structure every single phone call that any operations person has on our team with that three-pointed structure, and any real estate agent can do this. If you structure your calls in that three-point format, your client's never going to call you first unless there's a big problem, you know, the furnace breaks or something like that, because I've already told them, here's what I've accomplished, here's what we're working on now for you, and here's the next time that you're going to hear from us. And so if you look at every single step in the transaction, you can use that. And so I'd ask them at the end of the call if they had any questions for me. Is there anything we can help you with right now? By the way, who else do you know who could give Jeff the same service that you're receiving? Okay, great. Now the next time that you're going to hear from us is on Tuesday when we get the appraisal results back. At that time, we're going to do A, B, and C. I already prepped them for the next time they're going to hear from me and what to expect when they hear from me. As a result, my phone never rang. And so when I used to tell people that I was able to do the 400, 500 transactions with him and I was not being chased by my cell phone all day, it was because the only time my phone was ringing was when it was a new client, and of course I was answering those as soon as possible, but otherwise everything was outbound because I was in control of it. And so as a result, I did all of my calls within a certain hour every single day, and then I was free for the rest of the day to do whatever it was that I needed. So a way to keep in control of your schedule.
Question, and let's shift gears a little bit before we get to some of these pain points. A lot of people ask when I'm doing the half-day sessions, we talk about how once we made the decision to shift to customer service focused, our reviews went through the roof. We've got over 1,000 reviews on Zillow. I think we're maybe number 2 or number 3 in the entire country for positive reviews on Zillow. Most of those happened in the last 2, 3, 4 years. So what is that program that you implemented that helped us, besides for our service actually improving?
Yeah.
How did we, if I'm in the audience and say, how do I get to 1,000 reviews or even 100 reviews? What did we implement to do that?
So that happened because during that time frame that we were so transactional, our reviews weren't really the best. And so as soon as we got through that, I said, okay, one of the first things that I need to do is bury these. So that way no one else sees them because we're getting better here. And so I thought about what we could do that makes us look better, not just on Zillow, which we have over 1,000 reviews on Zillow, but all platforms, because you don't know where your client's searching you. Are they looking on Facebook? Are they looking on Google? Are they looking on Facebook? Or are they one of the 5 people who still use Yelp? And so we, which we hate Yelp.
Is crooked.
Yeah.
Crooked Yelp.
Yeah, we can't win with Yelp. Just don't look us up there, please. So I started thinking, okay, what can we do that benefits the client and benefits us? And so we basically created this 5-star program. And so what the 5-star program is, for those of you that haven't heard me talk about it, the 5-star program is we call all of our clients at the end of the transaction, which, by the way, this is not something that we used to do before. If you have a team, pick someone on your team to do it. If you don't have a team, ask another agent to do it for you, and you'll do the same for them, right?
And
So
you could also do like a Survey Monkey or something like that. You can do it digitally.
I don't like the digital one from the standpoint of I want to have a conversation with them about it. I feel like it's a little bit more relational. Yes, we do send a Survey Monkey. If they don't answer our 3 calls that we make to them, then we result to Survey Monkey. But otherwise, we place 3 phone calls to them to try to have this conversation, which again, if you don't have someone to do it for you, ask another agent, you do the same for them. Our questions are very simple for our closing call. First, I'll just tell you the same script, so.
And by the way, that could also be the manager of the office, that could be the broker.
Anyone, yeah. Hi, this is Taylor. I'm with Jeff Glover and Associates, and I'm part of our client care department. I'm giving you a call today in regards to your recent transaction with our agent, Amy, at 123 Main Street. Do you have 5 minutes for 3 quick questions? Okay, great. Question number 1, if you don't mind me asking, I'm sure you've been asked this before, how did you hear about our team and your agent, Amy? The reason why we're doing that call, or that question first, is because we want to know what's working in our business and what isn't. People may spend thousands of dollars on a source, and you actually don't receive anything from it. I'm kind of sometimes flabbergasted by the amount of people who put money out there, and then when I ask them what the return on investment is they really have no idea. And so that's why we ask that question every single time. And you should also know that we ask that question 3 times throughout the transaction because their answer changes. They forget that they saw us somewhere, they also heard about us over here. I want to make sure that I have basically 3 sources for every single client, which usually can't happen if you ask multiple times. And so first we ask that question and I say, okay, great, thanks for sharing that with me. I just want to make sure that what we're doing in the industry or in the market is working. And if you don't, and my next question for you is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not that great and 10 being unreal, how was your experience with Amy? And so if they rate us a 6 or above, we segue into one conversation. If they rate us a 5 or below, we segue into another conversation. The 5 or below, I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. If you don't mind me asking, what can we do next time that I may be able to earn your business back? And so we're typing these as we're talking to the client. We take very thorough notes on this call. and they immediately get sent to Jeff, and Jeff's calling within like 2 minutes to the client, letting them know that he already has been aware of the conversation, we want to fix it, blah, 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 blah. Do you want me to tell them about your funny little saying that you send out?
Yeah, I think I actually mentioned it yesterday, but you can say it again.
Okay, he's really proud of it. That's probably why he wants me to do it again. So his idea to this contribution was if they didn't have a good experience, I actually got this idea from the Ritz-Carlton. I looked at companies like that, companies like Chewy, companies like Zappos, and I said, if you don't have a good experience with these companies, how do they fix it? What is it that they do to try to mend the relationship? And obviously the most important is getting on it ASAP, which is why he has to call within 5 minutes or less as soon as we get off the phone with them. But we also send out something to them, which we just use, like send out card brownies. We send them the brownies and his funny little note card, and it says, we're sorry your experience was not as sweet as the treat you're about to eat.
Aww.
So they get that like 10 days after the call. And really, again, why we're doing that is we all know that everyone has clients that you just can't win with, right? You tell them the sky is blue and they tell you it's green. And so we just want to make sure that with those clients that we at least try to keep somewhat of a positive image with them, right? If someone else says that they're selling their house with us, they don't steer them the other direction,
Also
right?
known as damage control.
Correct.
I want to prevent them from going on and writing a bad review.
Correct. And so that's why we do those 2 steps. That's basically our process for anyone that does a 5 or below. Anyone who's a 6 or above, we say, awesome. We are so excited that you had a great experience with us. If you don't mind me asking, what made it unreal? And so basically we're trying to get them to go to like 2 or 3 levels deep about what made it a little bit more special. And then
say things like, I love the photos, or,
oh, yeah.
oh my God, it
your
closed
photographer's
quickly.
great, your support
or,
staff is amazing.
Awesome, sign went up quick, whatever.
You never called me first, or I never had to call you. So at that point, I say, that's awesome. Your agent, Amy, probably already told you about our 5-star program, but I would like to tell you about it again if you've got a minute. And so the 5-star program is if they write 1 review and they copy and paste it on 5 different platforms, we will send them a $50 gift card. And so the reason why we decided to do this was because we couldn't pick what was most important. Like I said before, you don't know where your clients are searching for you. I probably should make it like a 10-star program or something and make them go on 10 different websites. But if they copy and paste 1 review and they put it on those 5 platforms, then we'll send them $50. We send them an email immediately after getting off the phone with them that kind of outlines this program for them, and we put like 3 or 4 sample reviews at the bottom because
That
we
part
don't
is
want
key.
right. We don't want the one-liners of like Amy was great, it was great, loved them. You know, we want a little bit more depth
So you're
with
kind
that.
of coaching them into how to write a good review for you.
Yeah,
and they need it.
Yeah, my favorite time is when they take it and they just plug in their agent's name in the empty spots. Makes it a lot easier. But then all of our reviews look really consistent,
Right.
so we try to split
That's why
them.
we give them 3 or 4 options.
Correct. So you get notified immediately or within 24 hours when people write a review on you. So we have a spreadsheet that we keep track of them, and as soon as we see all 5, we immediately reach out to the client and say, hey, thanks so much for completing the 5-star program. Where can we treat you to dinner? And we send them a gift card the next day.
Where are the 5 places that we send them?
Yep. So currently, which I switch these up because our industry is always changing. Currently,
And it varies by market too, which I'll give you a thought in a second. But
Yeah.
what are our 5?
Zillow, Realtor.com, Facebook always. I'll never let go of Facebook because all of their friends can see when they write a review on you on Facebook. Homelight and Google.
Got it. And how we decided on those 5 and how I would recommend you pick your 5, because in your market, for instance, Homelight might not advertise, and so that has no value to you. What I would recommend you do is go to Google in your, when you're home or whatever, you could do it later today. Real estate agent reviews in Boise, Idaho. Real estate agent reviews in Cleveland, Ohio. And you'll see who's buying sponsored ads, and you'll see who's organically showing up. I wouldn't be opposed to even trying to figure out a way to get reviews on somebody who's buying sponsored ads. For instance, Homelight in our market is one of them. So even though they're not showing up organically as 1, 2, or 3, they're buying a sponsored ad and they're showing up at the top, right? So I would consider 1 or 2 of the sponsored and 3 or 4 of the organics, and that's in your market where your review should go.
And I actually got this question the other day from a coaching client. She asked, do you really believe that because that time is so hectic for them that they're actually going to do this? My response was, well, they do. Like in most cases, they do. But then it got me thinking about something that I used to do for you years ago when I was trying to, again, cover some of the not so great reviews that we had. I introduced something called a file close email, which I'm actually going to be bringing back in 2020.
It's a real good one. Write this one down.
The file close email, it literally is the subject line. It says file close on their address. And I'll paraphrase the email, but it basically says, you know, hey, Andrea and Joe, hope everything's well. I know it's been about 20 days since you moved into the new house. I hope everything's going great for you. I just got out of a meeting with Jeff, and we're working on closing out our files for the rest of, or from the previous month, and I still have your file on my desk because it doesn't look like we got a review from you or a comment on your experience. I just want to make sure that you got these below links. Let me know if I could help in any way.
They feel like they're holding something up. You can't close out the file.
100% return on investment every single time I send out those emails. Everyone does it, as long as you had a good experience with them. If we didn't have a good experience, I'm not pushing them for a review.
We're not sending that.
Right.
Yes.
We don't need to know.
That's why, but no, really though, that's why the survey in the beginning is so important. Because if you do everything that we said and you just leave out, oh, I don't need to do the phone call survey or whatever, have my broker call or have another agent call. If you do everything but that, the problem is it'll lead to some negative reviews.
Well, honestly, what ends up happening sometimes when we do these and I send it out to the agent, which I'm CC'd on every single one that goes out to our agents, they may get like a 5, and our agent is saying, oh my gosh, I thought everything was great. What happened? Well, we want to do that call and we want to identify that they're a 5 before we send out a review to them and ask them to post it on 5 different platforms. So that's why you do that, because although you may have thought everything was great, I mean, I'm sure by a raise of hands, everyone has had a transaction before that you thought went amazing, and for some reason the client was still upset, right? That's normal. And so that's why you do that discovery survey first, and then you do the 5-star program, and if they still didn't do the 5-star program, at the end of the month, it's a file close email.
File close email. Got it. Love that.
And honestly, one of our large sources of business are reviews. People just Google Jeff Glover and Associates, maybe because they saw a billboard or something, but then they saw that we have 100+ positive reviews on Google, and that's now their second source that they gave us.
Yep.
Well, I saw you on a billboard, but then I did some research online, and it looks like you guys have some great reviews. By the way, can I work with Dave?
Yep. Yeah. So for those of you that are on teams, make sure your teams have your Zillow account, for instance, set up to where your reviews are showing up as well, because we have a lot of requests. Because in our market, at our volume, people don't necessarily think that they're going to be working directly with me. So then they'll go and pick agents that are second, third, or fourth in line in terms of the reviews on our Zillow site, for instance.
Especially as you continue to grow your team, because a lot of people will call in sometimes and say, you know, that they want to work with us, but I'm sure I won't get Jeff. So if you have a team, you want to make sure that you're also putting your people on a pedestal and getting positive reviews for them, because there's a pretty good chance that they're working with one of them and not necessarily you.
Agents will stay for recognition and they'll leave for recognition, always, and that's a great way to recognize them. So let's shift gears a little bit with the time we have remaining, because we haven't gotten to, well, I guess we've talked a little bit about pain points.
Those are two of my pain points. I already went through two
Oh,
of
good.
them.
So we take still between 60 to 80 listings a month as a team. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of pain points with sellers. So the first one I wrote down is pain point number 1, set listing appointment. Can you talk about that a little bit?
This was actually a pain point that we've had for a while, and I actually didn't put the wheels in motion to fix it until like the last year or so, which I point that out because regardless of what an amazing business you have, I'm sure the Ritz-Carlton still has pain points that they identify and they say, oh shoot, we have to find a way of fixing this. Every single month, our team, our new operations manager, which she's out in the hallway, make sure you say hi to her. Her name's also Taylor. Makes it very easy to always remember the Taylors run JGA.
Yeah, so when you're hiring, you know, you've got an executive assistant and you're ready to grow an operations team. In the ad, you say only people with the first name Taylor or Mary or whatever your operations person name is need to apply. Because then there's
you don't
no
have to change any
confusion.
nameplates or anything. It's great. I actually almost didn't hire her because I couldn't fathom having another Taylor in our organization, but then I changed my thinking and thought every time people call, they're always calling for her and I never have to pick up the phone.
Yeah,
So
there
it
you
actually
go.
worked out well.
Yes. And so by the way, she started as a client care associate, and it kind of morphed into operations manager, and now Taylor Cornfield, who's out there, who's been at the booth all week, is actually the operations manager for JGA. And so now Taylor is somewhat insulated from issues and things that arise with JGA, so she can do things like this or work with the offices or brokerages and so forth.
I'll talk about that listing appointment in a second. I really want to make sure that that is heard, though. Every person that's in our organization, myself included, started, I don't want to say necessarily at the bottom, but started at one of our entry positions and then worked their way up. And that is so crucial for building an awesome organization because they learn every step of the business and they learn, they're cross-trained in everything. My listing coordinator right now was doing transaction coordination earlier this morning and vice versa because they're cross-trained in those roles and they're able to pick up where we need more help or where something else is slacking. Yep. And as a result, Taylor is, I love her to death because she is able to manage the operations team and manage them effectively because she also has done those roles and she knows what they're going through every single day. I know that I'm not supposed to talk to my listing coordinator during a contest where we're pushing for listings because she's pulling her hair out because she's crazy busy. I was there during that 9 months. I know exactly what she's going through. Yep. And so it's very important that, you know, people sometimes will put out an ad, like you said, looking for so-and-so. Honestly, I look around first and say, okay, who here do I think can do this position? Or this is a great person and they're ready to move up. What position do I need to build in our organization to allow this person to grow? Yeah. And so a lot of our positions on our within Live on Real companies, they don't follow the typical names because we created them, because we had a great talented person and we wanted to keep them in our world, so we created a position around them. Yep. So kind of changed the hiring method, but it makes a big difference. So with the setting of the listing appointment, so basically we realized that we were setting a bunch of listing appointments through our prospecting efforts and people were canceling on us, which doesn't really make much sense before meeting with us. And so we looked at, okay, why is that happening? And it was happening because they didn't know, you know, we talk about what happens next and what can we do so they don't call us first. We weren't doing that right from the beginning. We were doing that once we got a contract signed. So for anyone that is in real estate in general, they don't even have to be on a team, look at, in this instance, we said, okay, we're prospecting, we set an appointment with someone, we tell them we're coming out, but we don't really necessarily tell them what exactly is happening there. You know, sometimes we're gonna get a contract signed, we're gonna walk them through a market analysis and so forth. And so what we ended up creating this year is we videotaped each of our agents saying, hi, my name is Linda, I'm with Jeff Glover and Associates, and I'm looking forward to meeting with you at your home. When I come out, we're going to accomplish 3 or 4 key things. First, I'm going to walk you, came up with a script, what is it?
Yeah, so first I'm going to take a look at your property in the eyes of the buyer. Then we're going to talk about an approximate value of the home. And then if you have any questions, we'll go through the contracts and get started. Of course, if you aren't ready to sign at that point or you have further questions, then I'll have the answers ready for you at that time. Something to that effect.
Yeah, you know, we'll walk you through our marketing program so that way if you are ready to hire us for the job of selling your home, you know exactly what we're going to do to sell it for you. We basically took this video, and now anytime we set an appointment, we immediately send it out to the seller via email so that they are receiving it and they know who they're meeting with, what they look like, you know, what we're going to be talking about, and why they should be meeting with us. As a result, we saw that our appointments set to appointments canceled rate dropped drastically because people didn't want to cancel on Linda after they saw how sweet she is and that she's coming out on Wednesday, right? And they felt more comfortable about the process. And so the reason why I picked that out as one of the pain points is because a lot of people don't really think about customer service until they have a contract signed. You need to think about customer service from the moment the phone rings. It's the way that you answer the phone. It's how quick you answer the phone. It's how quick you're getting back to them. All of that starts before you even have a contract signed. Yep. So that's why we identified that as one of the pain points.
Last pain point I want to mention, because I know we're going to get them a list of the rest that we didn't get to.
Yeah, he told me I didn't have 3 days to go through 27 of them with you.
But we had to come up with a fancy title, because there's actually 67, but we were going to cover quite a few. We get a contract signed. Now what? We have a lot of people or a lot of customers that want to know what's going to happen next. A lot of our calls, what we found during that experiment of what can we do, change, add, or implement so a customer never has to call us first, a lot of the notes and things that we wrote up on this whiteboard had to do with what happens after we take their listing. So
Yeah.
what did you guys do to overcome that?
So basically, I looked at, okay, there's these 67 pain points, and if I gave them a phone call on every single one, man, we would be talking a lot, right? And so we looked at all of the pain points, and honestly, I looked at when I was your executive assistant helping with your transactions, I looked at where they had the majority of the questions, and I wrote them down on a notepad as I was doing your job, or doing the job as the executive assistant, and I did not mean it that way.
Exactly. There it is.
Honestly, that just came out. I didn't mean it that way. As I was doing my job as his executive assistant, I was writing down all of the things of the questions that they had and the pain points that they had. And I said, okay, these are the ones that require an actual conversation, right? The appraisal goes bad, I'm not going to send them an email on that, right? I need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. But the little things, you know, placing of the lockbox or getting ready for the photo appointment or so forth, those are things that I don't necessarily need to have a physical conversation about, but they are equally as important for them to know. And so we created something which I know our group operations right now, Gino, you're in the front row, Candace just built an awesome What Happens Next book. And so basically the What Happens Next book is a book that he gives them on the listing appointment as he's leaving and says, this is everything you need to know when working with our organization. And so we wrote out, you know, preparing for the photo appointment, how to remove your key from the lockbox, how to access your lockbox, what happens after a showing, you know, all of the things that we identified as pain points that were important but didn't really require a phone call from our team. We put them in this book and we give it to them and we tell them to read it. And the awesome part is when we're calling them and setting up the photo appointment.
Hold on a second. I tell them to read it. Our best agents actually walk them through it. Let's
Correct.
be clear.
You probably have heard that he's in and out of listing appointments in 20 minutes. So he just throws it at them and walks out. Just
I'm getting better. Go on.
So the cool part is the clients actually read it because it looks cool and they're nervous instantly about selling their home and what they just agreed to do. And so they read it, and when our listing coordinator, Miranda, calls and says, hi, I'm Miranda. Jeff asked me to give you a call. I understand that we're working with you on selling your home, and we are so excited. I have a couple dates open for our photographer to come out. They already know Miranda. They'll say, oh, Miranda, you're the blonde, because her picture's in the back, and we have a biography on her. They already know when Jason's walking up to the door exactly what Jason's going to look like, and we have a biography on him. So they're actually reading it, and it's answering probably
A lot of their questions
60%
that they would normally reach
of their
out to us for.
questions, and it saves me a lot of time because I don't have to have that conversation with them.
Yep. So last question before we break. If I know I need to implement a lot of processes and procedures, or I have an assistant that needs to implement a lot of processes and procedures, how do I get to work with you?
See Kate at the Glover U booth. We have one-on-one coaching opportunities available. It's not necessarily just for operations people. You know, I come in and help save, just like we did with our business, and look through every single process and procedure and identify what's broken and identify what's working well and how we can make it even better. Honestly, that is my passion in life, is looking at businesses and looking at opportunities and saying, last night I said to you, I really think I should change my term from a director of operations to a director of experience. And what can we do to make the experience better?
So you are coaching agents and operations team people, right?
On operations.
Yeah,
well,
on operations.
don't ask me about sales. I can't help you there.
And also, we do have several clients that are elite clients that work with a sales coach.
Yep.
And either they or their operations person works with you a couple calls a month as well.
Yeah,
So, there's
so you
that
get
option.
2 or 3 calls with me depending on the month that we work solely on operations stuff, which you have a lead admin. I could coach your lead admin, or I work with some of the lead agents themselves that need some help on hiring. I review resumes with you and help you identify the right person.
Awesome. Let's hear it for Taylor Kerrigan. Thank you. Thank you. Nice job. Okay, real quick, if you would do me a favor, open to Tuesday, January the 7th. I just want to go over the schedule for the rest of the day, and then we will be breaking for lunch. Tuesday, January the 7th in your workbook. When we come back, the very first thing we're doing at 1:30, because we promised we would cover 3 things: building a massive database, adding value to it, getting a return on it. So at 1:30, I will be on stage sharing with you, I don't know, 20 or 30 things that we've done over the last 5 years to build our database to nearly 10,000 people today. That's happening at 1:30 when we come back. If you could throw the lunch slide on the screen, please. There are your options. Now, the golf course, if you're wondering how to get to the golf course clubhouse, it's a nice day out. You can walk. It's like a 7 or 8 minute walk, or you can take one of those golf carts. Right when you go down the stairs, out of those back stairs of the hotel, you get to the golf cart path, you make a right, and it'll take you right out to the golf course. I know they've got great lunch there. I've had lunch there before. There are your options. Everybody make sure you're back here by 1:30, please. We will be on stage and start at that time. Thank you.